Hello, and welcome to Cheers to Fears, where we take horror films and turn them into drinking games. We are your two hosts. I'm Tucker.
And I'm Alex. Today, we will be closing off the Annabelle trilogy with Annabelle Comes Home. This time around, Dauberman will be given his first ever directing role after being connected with the Annabelle franchise for the last two films as a writer. Coming back to help make the story was James Wan, but much of the films was still Dauberman's, considering he wrote the screenplay as well.
Annabelle Comes Home is about the Warrens' daughter Judy and her experiences with the Annabelle doll when Mary Ellen comes over to babysit her for the night. Mary Ellen's friend Daniela strong-arms her way to be able to babysit Judy with the ulterior motive of reaching out to her deceased father.
Daniela then makes a big mistake by unlocking and opening the door to Annabelle's glass box meant to seal away the cursed doll. This not only leads to Annabelle's escape to torment the people inside of the house, but since she is also a beacon for other spirits, many other spirits are released to terrorize the young girls as well.
As always, after our movie synopsis, we do have to warn you that there may be spoilers that lie ahead. So if you want to watch the film before this video, you have been warned. You are free to pause the video, watch the movie, and come back when you're done.
We will be posting drinking rules now if you are interested in watching the movie with these rules. Currently, Annabelle Comes Home is on Netflix, so it should be easy for most people to watch. With that out of the way, let's get started.
Once again, we have death as our first drinking rule for the movie. You see somebody die, or death is implied for somebody, you drink. You did this to me! We counted people that recently died in the movie to inflate these numbers a bit, considering that the total number of drinks for this rule was only 2 with that adjustment included.
Next up, a guaranteed rule that will always work for any horror movie drinking game is when somebody screams, cries, or yells, you take a sip. For Annabelle Comes Home, we only counted 19 instances of this occurring in the film.
Rule number 3 that will work for most horror films is that you drink if you witness a jump scare on screen. In this movie, we counted a total of 14 jump scares.
Onto a rule that is in every Conjuring movie, as long as it does not attempt to kill us of alcohol poisoning, is you take a drink when you spot a crucifix on screen. This movie, we thankfully only saw 23, but believe it or not, there is still more drinks than any other rule we have for this movie.
Our next rule is you must drink when you notice a door opening or closing on its own. For this rule, we had to take an additional 12 sips.
Another trend from the Annabelle movies is drinking when you see the main antagonist, Annabelle, on screen. In the third installment of Annabelle, we saw her a total of 13 times on screen.
There was one other rule that tied deaths for 2 sips in this drinking game. That rule being, drink whenever you see a note made by Annabelle.
Moving on to drinking rules, especially for Annabelle Comes Home. Starting with when you see any awkward teenage love, take a drink. Trust us, it will help. We counted this occurring 8 times in the movie.
Hi.
Remember how at the store, Daniela said that you were babysitting here?
Yeah.
Me too. Anyways, that's why I'm here.
Our 2 last rules are very similar in nature. The 9th rule is you must drink for each new noteworthy spooky artifact. This rule gave us 10 drinks.
On the other hand, for our 10th and final rule, you must drink when you see a new entity on screen. For this rule, we had an additional 12 drinks. Since this rule and the previous rule were similar in some cases, such as the wedding dress, we occasionally had to double up for some drinks.
And that is all for the rules for Annabelle Comes Home, the last Annabelle installment to date. The total number of drinks for this movie by our count comes to 115 sips, which is the equivalent of drinking just under 4 standard 12-ounce cans. That number is based off of a 30 sip per can scale and makes Annabelle Comes Home one of our easier drinking games here on Cheers to Fears. So in this movie, with the drinking side of it, we kind of expected to see more drinks in it, especially with a couple of rules.
Yeah, so obviously Crucifix and Scream, Cries, and Yells have been very, very consistent on giving us a lot of drinks, especially in the Annabelle franchise.
Oh yeah.
Or I guess in all the Conjuring movie franchises. On top of that, Death and Note, just like it's an anime, only gave us a total of 4 drinks for those 2 rules, which 4 drinks for a combined total of 2 rules is absolutely nothing.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. These 2 rules is probably the sole reason that the drink total is so low, because if you think about it, 115 drinks when 2 of the rules only gave us 2 drinks each, that's still a pretty high total. So if those totals were something more significant, like 20, like some of our other rules, it would have been a lot tougher of a drinking game, I feel.
Yeah, and I guess that's the other thing. Like, even if it was like an extra 10 for each rule, then it would have been kind of just around that average drinking game-ish. But this definitely made it lighter, just with those 2 rules being so insignificant. Yeah. And I really didn't want to remove them because I feel like it's a trope in a lot of Annabelle movies for her to write the notes and leave them for people. Yeah. Or I guess just deaths in horror movies. I really hate removing that rule.
Yeah, and obviously there is some horror movies that don't have deaths, and when we get to those, we might not include it. But if there's even at least 1 death, you can count on us to include that rule.
Yeah, it's the same with scream, cries, and yells. Like, the only thing that we could have debated not putting it on was a quiet place. And the thing with A Quiet Place is there was still like at least 15 on it, I think. So it still made the count. This means if we ever run out of content and move on to silent films, we can probably still include it on there somehow.
Yeah. I don't see us running out of content though, let's be honest. There's about 1 million horror movies out there.
So I guess I should mention that I've watched it 3 times, and each time that I feel like I've watched it, it gets better, kind of. I guess one thing that I do like is it does set up a lot of sequels at this point, or a lot of other Conjuring spin-offs.
Right.
So I guess for the first Conjuring movie, we really didn't want them to make any sequels or anything based off of that. But it's at the point where it's past the point of no return. So they're going to make sequels, and that's inevitable. So it's nice to kind of see some other things thrown in there.
Yeah, I actually did like that too, where you got to see the Warrens' museum, I guess you'd call it, where you get to see all of their artifacts and stuff. And you got to see a lot of the things that were even included in previous films, which is like, hey, I saw that before, I know what that's from. And then, like you said, it also sets it up for so many more spin-offs that could come in the future, and I do like that too, because like you said, at this point I'm down to see any spin-offs.
Yeah. So the film starts with Annabelle at an intervention, it looks like.
Yeah.
And at this intervention is the Warrens.
Yeah. This is actually the first spin-off, I guess, that the Warrens are actually a part of and that you get to witness in person. And the reason we probably saw them in this one is because we were actually in their house this time around. And I mean, if you're in the Warrens' house, you could kind of expect to see them at least once in the movie. One thing that I did like in this movie was the humor that they used in it. They kind of included humor, but they didn't overuse it either. So for example, where the girl said that she can't come because my mom says I'm not ready to process death yet, and
Judy responds, "It's a birthday party."
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry I can't come to your birthday party, Judy. You can't either? My parents said I'm not really prepared to process death yet. It's a birthday party. I'm sorry.
I guess one more is at the very end of the movie where Bob comes inside of the house and he's just scared half to death, and they go, "Oh my God, Bob, are you okay?" And he goes, "No, I'm not okay."
Yeah, so there is some examples of humor in this, and I can always appreciate when they include humor in horror. I feel like they work well together if you do it well.
Yeah, it was also not at inappropriate times. Like, it's before anything like really spooky happened, or like in those like definite breaks in where something spooky can happen.
Right.
Like, they already put Annabelle in the box, or Annabelle was already in the box before that. It was very well set up in comparison to like some other horror movies where they make jokes. Like, I guess maybe Friday the 13th they make some. Something else that I did want to mention is there was actually good music in this movie. I feel like it was a lot more hard-hitting than some of the other audio used in Annabelle movies, or I guess Conjuring movies in general.
Conjuring movies in general, yeah. We made a note in a couple other episodes where we talked about the Conjuring films and their music and how they didn't work too well in those movies, but in this one I do agree the music did work better in this one.
It feels like it just didn't clash with the narrative as much as the other ones, which I like a lot more.
Yeah, it didn't take us out of the movie, rather it added more to the movie. And you mentioned Mary Ellen. I guess as a character, she was fine. She was nothing spectacular, like, I don't know, she was just kind of in the middle and didn't stand out all that much, but also didn't do a bad job, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like she was supposed to be the main character, but the other 2 characters are just a lot more interesting.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
Yeah, she kind of just gets overshadowed by them.
Yeah.
And I think you are right, though, that she was supposed to be the main character.
Yeah. I guess if we talk about Mary Ellen, we've got to talk about Bob Has Balls, where Bob's got balls.
Yeah.
cringy.
Oh yeah.
But I think that's how it's supposed to be. He was the comic relief.
Yeah, exactly.
When Bob's Got Balls was in the movie, he wasn't really in the scenes where it was like high tense horror.
Mm-hmm.
If so, he was like outside and was shown for like maybe like 2 minutes, where he was there for just a moment.
Yeah.
And just to like kind of not really symbolize that he was there, but just kind of for plot convenience almost.
Mm-hmm. And just carrying on with Mary Ellen, like, how do you deal with a child as a babysitter when the kid is scared of ghosts that she's seeing? Like, what do you do in that situation? I don't know how to comfort a child that's being terrorized by demons or whatever. Like, what do you tell her? Ghosts aren't real? Your parents are frauds? Like,
Yeah,
what do you
that will
say?
work.
Like, I don't know. It's hard. It's a hard situation.
You're living a lie. Get checked. You need mental help.
Exactly. Something I did like to see was that the story kind of revolved around Judy as a character, which is the Warrens' daughter. Her learning about her powers and that not all spirits are bad was just something interesting to see, and interesting to see it unfold, I guess.
Yeah. The other thing that I like is that it can set up like future films, like kind of made in like this generation, like 2020 or whatever age she is now. She's probably like in her 70s, I'd imagine, anyways.
In real life, yeah. And another way that this could be continued on from is Anthony was set up to be a potential love interest for Judy, which Dauberman actually got permission from James Wan to include that intentionally. And like, that's just another way to kind of spin it off if you wanted to.
Yeah. I guess speaking about Anthony, we have to talk about his older sister, Daniela, who is just another Mary Ellen, but I feel like this one's a lot more fleshed out. Even though she created the whole events of the film, her backstory was a lot more interesting. She had her deceased father, which explains also why Anthony was acting out and kind of being a bully earlier on in the movie. But I feel like just her coming to terms with her father, I feel like she just had a cleaner backstory than Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen, I just kind of felt was there.
Yeah.
In comparison to Daniela. Yeah.
I agree with that point, and it was kind of interesting just because they did kind of carry on with that point more than they did focus on Mary Ellen. They kind of added more backstory, like you said, to Daniela, and we got to actually see her father that was deceased, and like it was just a lot more things happening around that. So the fact that Mary Ellen was seemingly the main character of the movie, I don't know why Daniela got such a more focused backstory than her. I don't know if she got more of a backstory or if it was just more interesting and more memorable. I don't know, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I feel like it's really weird because you could debate that Mary Ellen is the main character, or you could debate that it's Judy or Daniela, but I feel like in my eyes it was Mary Ellen, but she just seemed so two-dimensional.
So I guess the main reason to watch this movie, at least in my eyes, is so that you get to see the new entities or the haunted artifacts. One example of this is the ferryman coin eyes were spooky. Like in the end when Mary Ellen's sitting at the end of his lair and she's got the coins over her eyes and sitting there with Annabelle. That was kind of a cool image to see, I guess.
Yeah, to be fair, I feel like the ferryman could have been one of the better things to focus on for a spin-off movie.
Yeah, I actually was going to say that too. I feel like they could do a spin-off from the ferryman, and I wouldn't be surprised if they end up, because I've actually heard of a lot of other people saying the same thing where they would have liked to see that, and I do agree with that because they could make a really interesting movie out of that, I feel like.
So I guess some other notable creatures are the werewolf. The werewolf was fine, but I mean all it really did was harass the boyfriend, so we didn't see it too much. But I guess the other one was the bride's dress. It possesses you, makes you kill people. It reminds me of Insidious a little bit, just the bride in black. That's the first thing that popped into my head.
Yeah, I can see that. Another artifact that's worth mentioning is the Feely Mealy. And fun fact about that, it's actually available on Amazon for $700.
For the low price of $700, you can get a handy J from a haunted artifact. Call today.
Seems worth it if you ask me. And then we got to see the samurai armor, which we saw in previous films, but now we kind of get to know the story behind it. I kind of thought that part was cool, and I like to see that.
I guess another one is the future TV. I really like the concept behind it. I guess just really touching on it quick, I feel like the Warrens just kind of stole it, because who would willingly give them that TV?
No, really.
It's like, oh, this is haunted, it's gonna kill you. in 30 days and they just kind of stole it and took it for themselves. That would sell for a lot of money, even though it's like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
The other thing that was seen in the TV was the phone ringing and then Daniela being covered in blood. That just leads to the speculation of the phone. I wanted to see what the phone did or what its purpose was.
Yeah, true. I guess the last 3 artifacts that are worth bringing up was the bracelet that lets you communicate with the dead, and then you had the typewriter, which maybe it was from The Shining.
All sitting in no place makes Annabelle a doll girl.
And then there was Rory's music box from the previous films, which we saw.
Yeah.
And with all that out of the way, what were your overall thoughts about this movie?
Final thoughts is, as I said before, it's much better than I remember it being. It just gets better with each watch, in my opinion. There wasn't a lot of flaws in the movie. Also, it really did its job in creating new entities in the Conjuring universe.
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like that's the biggest plus that this movie gives us, in my eyes at least. That's the one thing that kind of brings it up a level, is you can get a lot more spin-offs from it.
Oh yeah.
And then I also liked how it kind of involved the Warrens a little bit in this movie, and we got to see them. They obviously weren't shown like every scene, but we did get to see a little bit of a glimpse of them, and it focused more on their daughter Judy.
Yeah.
And I did like that aspect to this movie. And there were a lot of stupid people for sure. There's a clear Darwin Award winner for this one.
And that brings us to the Darwin Awards ceremony, where we nominate one not-so-lucky nominee, the Darwin Award. This award goes to the character who made a stupid decision that resulted in them getting killed, someone else getting killed, or simply resulted in something bad happening that could have been easily avoided. This award can also be given to a character that is just plain dumb. Here are the nominees.
The first nominee is Bob's Got Balls, who, to be fair, did not make too many stupid decisions in the movie, but took dating advice from somebody who has probably never kissed a girl before.
Next, we have the Warrens. And why, you may ask? Well, it's really quite simple. Why would you let teenagers babysit your daughter where there are several haunted artifacts that could easily potentially kill somebody who encounters them? I'm not sure that's the best idea for a teenager that has no context of how dangerous these items can be.
Speaking of idiotic teenagers, we have to mention Daniela for putting the whole events of this movie in motion. Daniela wanted to contact her deceased dad, which means she obviously believes in the supernatural. The biggest problem with that is she's drawn to the glass case containing the most demonic looking doll I have ever seen. On top of that, there is a card that says Devil in the bottom corner of the cage.
And the winner is Daniela.
I unleashed a demon, so not the same thing.
For very obvious reasons. Letting out a demon makes her the clear choice to win the Darwin Award today.
And with all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our look into Annabelle Comes Home and the rest of the Annabelle franchise. If you end up playing the game alongside the movie, or if you have any feedback or suggestions, let us know in the comments below. We also want to know what your favorite artifact or entity is in Annabelle Comes Home.
Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss next week's episode, where we are doing the other spin-offs to the Conjuring universe, starting with The Nun. If you want to check out our most recent video on Annabelle creation, click on the box on the top right. Or, if you want to see a playlist of all of our drinking games and movies we review, click on the box below it. Thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying cheers to fears.